roll.
In prep.
Hey, Sweat Sisters. Thank you so much for your patience and welcome back to PGS DigiFest. I am so excited because I'm surrounded by some incredible women that motivate me on all levels. I'm talking about as mothers, as moguls, as just nice people, you know? So I'm super excited to have a conversation with them today. If you've been checking out our Instagram, you know, our passion is about ending childhood obesity. And we know that women make 80% of the healthcare decisions in their households. So we wanted to have a motherhood and movement discussion today. So that way we can get to the bottom of how any moms out there can get their children active. If you are a mommy in the making, you can get incredible women. So today we have 4 inspiring people here. Number 1 is going to be my dear friend, Grammy-winning singer-songwriter and wellness advocate, Melanie Fiona. Say hello to everyone.
Hello.
We also have Chief Marketing Officer of Endeavor, Bozoma. John, welcome to the virtual building. All right, also here is entrepreneur, philanthropist, and fitness enthusiast, Talley Williams. Welcome. And our goal is to get our dear friend June on. She is trying to get in this building so she can join us in this conversation. So y'all just stay tight for that. All right, so ladies, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having us.
All right. So the first thing I would love to get to know is a little bit more about your journey growing up and maybe how your mothers played a role in your lives. Okay. So let's actually start this conversation off with Boz. Tell us, because we always see your mom. I always see your mom on the gram. You know, she's pretty girl sweat. So I want to know, is this something new, or growing up was healthy living a part of your childhood?
Yeah, my mom has always been a healthy living advocate. And so I'm so happy to be here because she was like, well, why am I not on the panel? And I was like, Mommy, I'm gonna need you to relax. Okay. I need you to relax. So just know that she's in the back, mad as hell. No, but my mom, actually, she's on her walk right now. She's always been a movement person. And what is so crazy, I know we'll get into lots of topics, but what is so crazy is that I actually wasn't. Like, I was the kid who was like, I don't want to move. I don't want to go outside and play. I want to stay inside and read my book. When I was in high school, I was running track, but I only did like the bare minimum because it was really just talent that got me there, not really any kind of other work. And then once I was done running, I was like, okay, now back to regular scheduled programming. So it wasn't really until a few years ago that I started to move the way that I move now. And I'm so in awe of what she used to do with 4 kids. And, you know, like there was 6 years between myself and the youngest. And she was constant. I mean, I'm talking about the sweatband. She was out here rocking with the oldies. She had the Thigh Master. You know, she had the leotard, the onesie type situation going on, and the sweat socks. She had everything. So I'm not quite sure how I became her daughter, but here we are today.
All right. And Melanie, how about you? What was it like growing up for you?
Ironically, growing up for me, I was a very athletic kid. I played every sport that I possibly could. And that didn't really come from necessarily either one of my parents. Like, I would just come home and be like, I joined the soccer team. I joined the track team. I joined the volleyball team. I joined the basketball team. They used to call me Deonis Sanders because instead of Deion Sanders. So I used to play all the sports. Like, I was a very active kid, but I remember being a very little girl, and my mom, I mean, she'd be in the basement, Jane Fonda workout tapes. Okay. And I just remember seeing my mom do these workouts when I was a very little girl, and I would just go down and be next to her and work out with her. But then, like, my own journey just started to myself, where I just wanted to be involved in all kinds of sports and activities. And then having an older brother, I think too, that really influenced me as well, because he was active. And so I would see him, and him being my older brother, I wanted to play sports and games with him. So I'll be outside tossing the football. All of my girlfriends in school, like all of the friends, boys, girls, we were active kids. So we were just outside all the time. And, you know, but my mom, as far as like a healthy living lifestyle, being an immigrant to Canada from the Caribbean, it was like two things was not going to happen. We're not spending money frivolously on junk food, and we're cooking everything fresh that we can. So, you know, everything was, my mom always had a love for gardening. She always had a garden outside. So she was always using things from her garden. To this day, my mom still has a beautiful garden and she cooks from her garden. So I feel like those things were very instrumental in kind of setting the foundation for who I would become as a mother and as a woman, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Bo, you are the mightiest of moms on this call today, because you have not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 kids. So yes. So you tell us how you feel about this statistic. Do you really feel that women make 80% of the healthcare decisions in their households?
For sure, I do. Yeah, anything that happens, I'm the one that's getting called on. If anything happens in my house, I'm calling my mom, I'm calling my grandmother, I'm calling my best friend. Yeah, we do. And so we have, because we're smarter, we know more things. We know home remedies. We know so many things that men are either afraid to try or would even, like the other day, we called my mom. I grew up in the South, so there was no healthy eating for me until I moved out on my own. Okay, I didn't know anything about healthy eating. I knew pinto beans, hog maws, chitlins, and all that stuff. You understand? Not that I ate any of it, but that's what I grew up on. But the other day, my husband almost got stung by a wasp. And I told him, listen, get some mustard. If you get stung by a wasp, apply mustard to it. He was like, huh? I was like, yeah, mustard. And he was like, I don't know, what is it going to do? I was like, mustard has turmeric in it and vinegar, so it helps with inflammation. So if you get stung by a wasp or a bee, you don't take the stinger out. You put the mustard on it to help with the inflammation. Okay. And so I call my mom. So yes, of course, we do. We are the doctors in our house. The nurse, everything.
The more you know, the more you know.
Yeah, so turmeric is in that. Read the instructions on the back of mustard. And so that's one of the things we've done my whole life. And so it's just funny how we always call on women for everything. So yeah, we do make up 8%. For sure.
Okay, so
can we give a shout out to Melanie right now, who is every mom, because that's just the way it is. Okay, it's like the fact that we are able to focus on anything at any point of the day. It's like a obstacle course filled with like war and famine and and like a marathon. Because you need it. Like, I don't even like how is it that we even make it? Because like the kind of things you're always thinking about, trying to snatch people by their throats when they're bothering you, trying to formulate a good answer to a question that you've been asked, trying to look cute. Look how cute you look. You know what I'm saying? Like, can we get a round of applause for ourselves and what we do every day?
When you get even older, you're still being called on. Like, my phone done rung a million times since we on this, and I done told them I'm doing this.
Listen, they don't care. They don't care what we're doing. They don't care.
Listen, I appreciate that because I realize that like this platform is not like a speaker platform, so you can see everything. So I'm like, he's yelling at me from upstairs, even though I told him I have a call. I said, Cameron, and don't let me tell you about how the morning started with a busted pipe and me getting locked outside of the house. So let me tell you the story. This is a true story. So then he's coming downstairs. And then he's just doing the most. And there was a certain point where I my tone changed, and I was like, "Dear God, please let that mute button be on."
And you know what? If it hadn't been on, we would have still understood. Okay. Yes. And this is the whole center of the conversation around motherhood and movement, because do you ever get to sit still and even just have a conversation? We're just trying to have a small little conversation right here, and we still can't sit still.
No, my phone keeps ringing. I'm like, stop. You know I'm doing this. Like, come on now. Leave me alone for about 30 minutes.
It is what it is.
I understand. I hope it was entertaining. He is quite
I want to snatch him for you, girl. I was going to come through the computer and just snatch. Come here, little boy. Sit down. Sit down.
Did you even share how this morning you got locked out of your house?
I got legit locked out of the house. And then, of course, he does the right thing by not answering the door when I'm banging on it and ringing the doorbell. It was a whole thing. Then I had a busted pipe at the side of the house. I mean, it's been a morning. So
it's been a morning.
And then Chris too, to the point of like parenthood and how it works, like his dad is not here. It's just me. There's no, quarantine has kept the grandparents away. We don't have, and the nanny's not here. I'm just like, okay, you're going to have to be quiet for an hour while I do this. Please.
He's like, what hour? What are you talking about? I give you 30 seconds, 29, 28, 27.
All the hours are mine.
All right. Well, I really want to know more about your wellness journey quickly before, during, and after pregnancy, because I feel like a lot of women either do one or the other, right? So it's like they know they're having a child and, they're afraid to work out because they don't think that they can work out while they're exercising. And then once the baby is born, they go really, really hard. Or then you have some that went hard before pregnancy. And then afterwards, they just lost the motivation. They get too busy momming, doing that motherhood stuff. So, Boz, let's start with you. How was your wellness journey during pregnancy and then after?
Oh, man. Well, mine was pretty complicated. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, Boz. I forgot, but Bo and Boz.
Exactly. I was like, I started talking. Look at me. I'm ridiculous. I apologize, Bo. Girl.
Oh, it's okay. You know what? Before my 4, I was athletic. I was a cheerleader, track, band. We had to do it all back in my time. It's either you went to the military, you worked, or you played sports. It was that; those were your only choices. And so before then, I was very active. After I had my last 2, I didn't quite snap back, and I didn't like the feeling of not being able to chase them and do the things that I could normally do. My breathing was bad. I got over 100 pounds overweight from my last 2, something I wasn't used to. And so what happened crazy, my ex-mother-in-law sent me this VCR tape of Donna Richardson. And I had 4 children at home, living in San Francisco, not about to go nowhere. My ex-husband's in the military, gone, shipped out to the Gulf Shores or somewhere by this time. I don't know where he was. But I was like, what am I going to do? I need to figure out a way to get back to feeling like me, because I was feeling really, really bad. I was feeling sick. I was feeling tired. And then there's 4 little small ones who were back to back to back that I had to chase around every day. So popped in this lady who I'd never seen before in my life, Donna Richardson, one of the first Black female fitness instructors that I'd ever seen on a VCR tape. Popped her in, and she was showing us how to stay fit, fine, and fabulous at home with little to no weight at all. And this woman was bad, and she's still bad to this day. We're friends now, which is so crazy. We attend the same church, and I shared this story with her, and we both were crying like crazy. But popped her in, and she was just showing me how to become a healthier, better me. And she changed my life completely. So I learned how to work out from home. And that's why I'm a huge advocate of teaching women how to work out from home and how you can stay fit, fine, and fabulous at home. You don't really need a gym. She's the main reason why. And so because of her, I lost so much weight from home. And I just stayed on that track ever since. And I refuse to go back. But it's been a journey. I mean, we have our moments where we yo-yo up and down. Some minutes out, you don't want to work out. It's hard. It's hard. You have to have your mind right in order to get your body right. So it's a mental thing just to work out, period. And so I have my moments where I'm like, I just don't want to do this. But I always remember my self-love for myself and the self-help for myself and how I want to live here and be here longer for my now granddaughter. I'm a grandmother now. So it just keeps me going and going and going. And she inspires me, and so many others inspire me to just keep working out and living a healthier life. But yeah. It's a journey. It's been a journey, but it's been a great one.
Yes, it's so worth it. Now, what about you, Boz?
I know. Put the extra Z on there. Soft on there. Okay. So, gosh, mine is a little complicated because, as I said, I wasn't really into fitness per se before I got pregnant. I was one of the lucky ones whose genes just seemed to work out. And I didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about what I ate or how I ate or anything. It wasn't that I was necessarily a junk food addict, but I wasn't really that concerned with diet and exercise. And then I got pregnant. And again, I'm so glad we're having this conversation because I don't think we talk about it enough. sort of like our health during pregnancy and what could happen, right? We talk a lot about like that, the mommy glow and like all of the pretty things about pregnancy. But I find that we rarely talk about the scary stuff, the illnesses and the things that could happen. And so I didn't know. I was very ignorant. I mean, like I said, my mom had 4 kids. She always bragged about, easy pregnancies. I had a sister who'd had a son. Her pregnancy was easy. I had best friends who'd had kids. Like I hadn't encountered anyone who had a difficult pregnancy after getting pregnant. And so when I got pregnant, I was kind of like, okay, these prenatal vitamins, and I go see my doctor and da-da-da-da. And I started to swell what I would say unnaturally, and then people started to lie to me because I knew I didn't look right. But people were like, oh no, that's just, like you never know, like, everybody like is pregnant differently. But I was like bloated is what it felt like, extra water. And I really didn't pay attention to it until, unfortunately, it was too late. And I discovered that I had early preeclampsia. And so I was diagnosed about 4 months into my pregnancy. And that was my first pregnancy. And unfortunately, I had to deliver at 6.5 months because my blood pressure had just skyrocketed and the preeclampsia was out of control. And I lost my first daughter, after having given birth to her. She didn't survive the birth because she hadn't developed properly given my illness. And devastation doesn't begin to describe what I was feeling or what happened. And even in my therapy and in trying to figure out how to get healthy, because what happens in preeclampsia, for those who don't know, is that it's really your blood pressure, right? And it's onset by your pregnancy. And so I didn't have a history of hypertension. There was nothing to point to it. So it wasn't necessarily that I could be controlled by diet and exercise. But after my pregnancy, I realized that in order to get my health back, I had to, begin looking at my sodium intake and, getting some movement and all of that. And because I wanted to be a mom, I decided that I was going to put myself on a regimen so that I could get healthy and then get pregnant again. And so very shortly after, I did get pregnant again with my daughter, Lael. And 8 weeks into that pregnancy, I was diagnosed with preeclampsia again. And it was, I was terrified out of my mind because I was watching what I ate. I was, trying to move as much as I could without, of course, once you've gone through something like that, you're so terrified of any loss that I really didn't want to risk my body, to be honest. And so I was watching what I ate, but not moving that much. And preeclampsia, the problem is that you could really just be sitting still and your blood pressure will spike. And so for me, it was a constant understanding of like what I was doing, right? How I could keep myself sort of relaxed and calm and stress-free and try to cut out all the sodium and try to just make it through my pregnancy. And at almost 7 months, I had to deliver Lael. And thank God that, we had a really specialized doctor who was able to help me through my pregnancy. And Lael was born healthy and alive and was in the NICU for about a month before she could come home. But after she came home, my full attention was on her and making sure that she was well. And so I, again, put myself sort of on the back seat. And I would say that it took probably 2 years before I looked at myself in the mirror. And very much like Bo was saying, I was like, oh no, I don't like what is happening here. I don't even recognize myself. But at the time, I really couldn't put a lot of thought into it. And so I would say that, my pregnancy, health, wellness story and journey is really one of understanding what is actually happening in our bodies, talking about especially Black women's maternal health, and making sure that we're sharing these stories, that we're talking about it, we're talking about symptoms, because these are preventable diseases and preventable accounts in pregnancy that can also be treated. And so not everyone has to go through the type of trauma that I did, but only if we talk about it and take away the stigma of some of the shame and hurt and grief that comes along with it.
to, communicate with one another because we're not in this alone at all. Okay, Melanie, you.
So, I mean, to piggyback off of what Boz was saying is that I actually too, so previous to my pregnancy, I mean, even if I think about it, I was fairly active, and I was still very critical of what I thought I could improve on my body, which was really interesting. No matter how healthy I felt, I always felt like, oh, maybe like, we're women, we can be very critical of ourselves. And especially being in the public eye, it's like the minute you put on a few pounds, people are like, oh girl, you putting on weight? What happened? And it was like, oh, so it's interesting because once I got pregnant, I instantly showed. And I know that sounds crazy, but I have a picture at 5 weeks where my stomach is already like, boop. So my son was like, oh, I'm coming out. And then I started to gain weight and grow. This belly popped so fast that it was a bit of a crazy journey for me because my body was changing faster than my mind was catching up. And that really forced me to have to start to be like, okay, what do you do? Also, too, being in the public, I wasn't ready to announce the day I found out. I wanted to get to that 3-month mark. But to be honest, like, I don't even know how I got there without people calling me out because I was showing. And I just remember being like, all right, this is what it is. My body was changing so fast. And I remember at one point in my pregnancy, and I remember I had crazy things like I had sciatica in the body. And I remember at about 6 months, I went to my doctor's appointment and my doctor said to me, you put on 11 pounds since our last visit. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah. He's like, how's your diet been? And I'm like, I haven't been eating donuts and like cake all day. I don't know. I don't think that I've been doing anything differently. And he said, you got to be careful because you have a way to go. So longer story short, I continued to swell. I continued to get bigger. I continued to put on excessive weight. I think by the end of my pregnancy was I remember my last doctor's appointment before I delivered, and that was still 4 days before he was born. I was 74 pounds, gained 74 pounds. So by the time I went into labor, I was probably over 80 pounds of weight carrying. And and then by the way, like I was doing prenatal yoga, I was still out on the road, I was still taking meetings, I was still very active, despite this weight gain, this enormous weight gain. And then when I went into labor, I was then diagnosed with preeclampsia. And so that moment then became, what did I not know? Why was I not prepared? Who didn't talk to me about this? What is that? I've read about back labor. Why is it happening to me? The child is sunny side up. Okay. Why is he sunny side up? Why did, and all these things, I'm like, where did I miss it along the way? Where did my doctors miss it? Was it, they tested every single every single month for gestational diabetes and high blood pressure. Nothing ever came back abnormal. So, why would it show up in my labor? And it was very traumatizing for me because I didn't feel like I had been prepared for this moment to happen. Mm-hmm. And back to what you were saying, Boz, after like 6 weeks of me kind of going radio silent after having my son, I shared this video with the world of my experience emotionally, physically, about how I had felt about my state of wellness in that time. And it wasn't well. It wasn't well. My son was huge. I had put on so much weight. I developed diastasis recti, which is like a separation of the abdominal wall. It prevented me from being able to work out the way I wanted to when the doctor said that I could. I had a cesarean section. I couldn't walk properly after. I had to be extra careful. These were all things that my mental state was not prepared for, because I was like, I'm healthy, I'm fit, I'm about to have a baby. And then I was like, I'm going to have the baby at home. I mean, I could have died had I had my child at home, And so back to what you were saying, Boz, is like, it is very important that we are supported, sharing. I had a doula, have a community of women and other midwives and people you can speak to about what's happening with your body along the journey. Because once that baby shows up, we're the first people to sacrifice ourselves. I mean, I go back to my labor thinking when everybody was talking about C-section and I was kicking everybody out the room. I mean, I was already willing to sacrifice myself right there for my son. And then they were like, no, you have to be here. Both of you guys have to be here. And I was like, oh, right. I can't die here. Like I can't have a stroke or a seizure. Mm-hmm. So I had to give in and have the C-section. But these are the things, like these conversations of wellness throughout the whole process. And I think the greatest thing that I learned in that process was the word of surrender. Because again, like you said, seeing everybody around you have these like glorious, perfect experiences, and you think, oh, it's clockwork, it's Mother Nature, it's just going to work. And then you find yourself faced with unexpected obstacles, and your mind is not prepared, nor is your support system. So I think that is the main thing that I would say, is that like through that wellness journey, if I ever had to do it again, if I ever went back to have more children, I would just be so much more focused on every step of the every transition, every change, every thought, every feeling, and make sure that I'm sharing that with my medical staff and with my community of mothers.
Because thank you all for your transparency, because we needed this conversation today for sure. How are you all continuing now to stay active with these beautiful babies that put you through all of this? How do you enforce wellness into your household? We'll start off with you, Melanie, since you were going.
Yeah. So, for me, like I said, it took a minute. My initial, my first attempt back into fitness and wellness was a program called BirthFit out here in California. It was right down by the house, down the street from my house, and it was a specific program for postpartum moms, which I thought was so great because I had learned about the diastasis. I had learned about how to exercise with that in mind. I was getting really strong, and it was the thing that I knew that I had to do for myself. But it did take a minute, and like Bo was saying, it goes in waves. I was very focused on that for about 8 months. Then we moved out of state, and then I kind of fell off. Then I decided to have a vegan lifestyle. My son is vegetarian. And, even with my fitness journey, even as much as that goes, I try to keep wellness as the practice, I think, for me first. And then everything that falls under wellness includes the fitness aspect of things. So the thing that I most fell in love with recently was Orange Theory as far as fitness. But from a wellness practice, my meditation is very important to me. My, getting dressed and doing things for myself is very important to me. Whatever I can do, going these days with pandemic, going for a drive, taking myself out and getting fresh air, grounding my feet into the grass. This is all wellness for me. And with my son, by seeing me lead that example, he's also gone into the space of, okay, well, we meditate before we go to sleep. And maybe we need to take 10 seconds to do some deep breathing if our emotions are getting away from us. So, wellness has kind of become the umbrella, and then everything else falls underneath. But, I try to be very mindful of what I give him, how he sees us, participating in the space of fitness and health and wellness, and just trying to lead by example. And then also having grace with myself to be like, you know what? I'm just not into it right now. Because like right now, I'll be honest, for the past 2 weeks, I just have been like, no, thank you. I don't feel like running. I don't feel like jumping rope. I don't feel like doing anything. So, it's a process. June!
I'm so sorry. I really thought I was missing this. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the question we're currently on is pretty girl. Okay.
Sorry.
You have two incredible teens. Crazy that they're teenagers now. How has healthy living been incorporated into their lives as they've grown up to be these awesome teenagers?
Should I answer, or are you just telling me the question? Well, my son, who is going to be 19, he's a man, so he gets to decide kind of what he eats. It's kind of like his palate is almost untrainable at this point. He just has to grow out of all of his unhealthy addictions like I did. I've come to realize that I was once that person. So I was like, I don't argue with him. Whereas my daughter, she just turned 16, and she adopted her thoughtfulness of food and her mindset of food changed when it changed for me, when my relationship changed for me. Because a lot of what they gather in their young teenage years, they don't want to be told, but they get it from osmosis. So just seeing it was me talking to her, was me saying, if you have a choice between a donut and a piece of fruit, or, because we're foodies, we love food, but it was just, I had to be more mindful about the things that I put in her. It's almost like dangling a carrot. So if I bought those things that I knew they loved, when they were babies, we want to make them happy, we buy them, things to make them smile. I had to be a little bit more mindful about what that was going to be. So I didn't create temptation for her, and I didn't shame her. I just kind of changed the way my relationship was with food. And she got really excited about how excited I was about it. And, movement, and me saying, oh, I couldn't do this before, and now I can do that. Speaking about myself, my experiences. And then she became more mindful naturally. And I think for us, that really worked. Teenagers go through a stage where in puberty, they, their bodies change, and they sometimes gain weight, and they hold on to, what they call baby fat or whatever, which I love baby fat. I think it's so delicious. But she had to make the decision for herself. I mean, she looks back at photos now and says, why didn't you say something? And I'm like, it wasn't my place. I don't want to overproduce my kids to where they don't come with manuals. So I have to go up for instincts. And my instincts was telling me, try your best not to make her belittle her in the experience, but empower her in the experience of getting healthy.
Bozoma, any advice that you have out there for working moms who are trying to stay fit and then also kill it in the office? Like, how do you balance it all?
Yeah, girl, what kind of balance are you talking about? I'm like, it doesn't exist at all. This is all a facade. So I was like, I have on no pants. That's how the balance is. So let me see. It's interesting because up until 2 years ago, I was super concerned with, my daughter and my work, and I didn't count. I think that's been a little bit of a theme where I put myself on the back burner, not intentionally. And I don't even think, I didn't even realize I was doing it. But I have been, really in a state of evolution. I mean, we all have been, but for myself, an intense state of evolution for the last 7 years, really. So, I became a single parent, which I did not intend. And with that transition, I put myself even further into the background, so I was simply only concerned with my daughter's wellness. I was concerned with, obviously taking care of my home and making sure that we were stable, succeeding at work, which was really tough because I spent 5 very difficult years in Silicon Valley with no support in very toxic environments. And so I just kept putting myself on the back burner while in the public eye, I was flourishing. I mean, people who don't know me were like, oh, girl, you better, yes, make it work, do it, and meanwhile, it was like, I was slowly dying. It was like all my energy was being spent putting on a show and everything else was just crumbling. And so almost 2 years ago, I had just come to the end of I'd made my decision to leave Uber, for which I spent a year in a pretty desperate place. And it was really tough. And I joined Endeavor, which now has, I have 900 people on my team. My daughter, I said, is 11. I have a bunch of creative projects. I'm doing a podcast with Katie Couric, and I'm writing my book, and I have a show that is in development. Like, there's just all kinds of things going on. And so I realized that in order to have the endurance, really, and the conditioning to keep up with my life and not to implode, because I was very close to it 2 years ago, I looked at myself, again, like one of those, truth-telling moments in the mirror where you're just like, girl, what happened? Like somewhere along the way, this does not look good, and all of that, like Photoshop that they be throwing on your photos is not doing a good job, is not serving you in real life, And so I really at that point took it upon myself to figure out how I could do it, because every excuse I had, right? It's like I was flying up to San Francisco every day. And so it's like, well, I don't have time in the morning to work out. And when I come home, I got to make sure my daughter is good. So I don't have time at night. On the weekends, I'm just trying to sleep and catch up with my friends. I had every excuse. And so I really had to put some boundaries into my life to create the space. And that only comes from the desire to do it. No one could bully me into it. You know, I saw June running around dancing her underwear and being like, damn, that girl looks good. You know what I'm saying? But like, I was like, I don't know how to do that. You know, but I had to make the choice and really and force it into my day. And so now, well, not these days because, you know, it's COVID time and we're all inside. So I have a little more flexibility in my calendar, but my meetings still start at 8 a.m. So that means I'm still waking up at 5:30. I have to get in, you know, my hour of workout. I have to make sure my daughter is set up because here we are, it's just the two of us. So gotta, you know, make sure she's good. And then I can start my day. But without that, the whole thing goes to shit. So for me, it's like, I've got to force the time and understanding that self-care is not just a hashtag. It's not just, you know, something cute to say. It's not an emoji, but it's actual practical work that I have to force in is essentially how I've been able to find the so-called balance.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And there are some questions in here, since we're running short on time, that people want to know answers to. So I'm going to read a few of them and then have you anybody can hop in here. Nancy Palmer asks, do any of you beautiful ladies suffer from bloating? And if so, do you recommend paying for a food sensitivity test?
Well, I don't suffer from bloating much.
You're like, no bloating?
Not really.
Oh, Melanie, I think you're on mute.
No, we can't hear you.
Okay.
Girl, because you were yelling again. You got that tone in the back.
That child, I had to switch it up. But I think, you know, it's interesting because I do believe that we do have food sensitivities. And I think that it is really important with anything, like, I think it's important to always take a temperature and a gauge of how you feel in general after you hang out with somebody, after you have a conversation with somebody, after you take a meeting with somebody. I feel like anything is an opportunity to gauge how you feel. And I feel like food is definitely one of those things. When you eat something, sometimes, I know for me, I'm not a meat eater. I'm probably 90% vegetarian until I go home to my mom's house and she cooks up some West Indian food and then I can't say no. But, you know, I find that I noticed that was my transition to vegetarianism. And then when I went to veganism for a little bit, was the inflammation I lost in my body when I gave up meat. Now, it's different for everybody. Some people have dairy sensitivities where they eat milk and they get bloated, just like when you have cheese or milk, sometimes while you're breastfeeding, your baby gets colicky or gets gassy. And generally, like what you're eating, your baby's getting from your milk, and then the baby gets gassy. So I would just say, if it's important, like food sensitivity is one thing. If you are very concerned, I would say maybe go to a specialist if that's what you want to do. But I feel like you have the ability on a daily basis to monitor what it is that you're eating and really take a note. Just keep a notepad with you and be like, what did I eat today? How did I feel after? When did I recognize that the bloating showed up? And what's the consistent thing? And then you can start to figure out what is maybe affecting you in that way. And then there's also anti-inflammatory foods and things that you can take, like celery juice, like turmeric. We were talking about that earlier on. You know, there are things. So I think that it's good to ask the question, but I think we also have the ability to start to kind of take a look at ourselves and say, what's working for me? What isn't working for me?
Absolutely. When I stopped eating dairy, my skin changed completely. Doing that, really quickly, let's wrap up with maybe sharing some last minute advice or words of wisdom that you think anyone out there who is watching wants to know. So I'll start with you, Bo. So if you could share any last words you would love to leave with everyone.
I'll just say this. I'm going to say fitness first off, because that's my life, my whole life right now. Your journey is your journey. Don't try to look like me. Don't try to look like Melanie, Boza, June, or Aisha. When you go into fitness, you go into it for you. It is important in order for you to continue on your journey of fitness that you try to get your mind right before you get your body right, or you will constantly yo-yo back and forth on your journey. And that's okay, because I do it too, you understand? But at the same time, life requires a lot of self-love in order for you to just be who you truly want to be. and just for you to accept who you are. So I'm always preaching self-love to my children, to myself. I have stuff on my mirror in every bathroom in my house, just for me to just continue to keep loving me and pushing me to be the best for me, not for my husband, not even for my children, because when it's all said and done, I came into this world by myself and I'm going to leave by myself. And if I'm not good for me, I can't be good for nobody else. So I have to just always remember to figure out this way to love you, find what you really enjoy doing in life that makes you happy. Because when you happy, everybody else happy. Because when I'm mad, my whole damn house mad. You understand what I'm saying? It ain't good around here. So you have to find ways to figure out yourself, your true self, that self-love, and live the best life you possibly can, being you, not anyone else.
Awesome. Bozoma?
Oh gosh. I mean, it's so hard, right? Because we think about all of the ways in which we actually move, as moms. Like we were saying, sometimes it's not even just physical, but mentally, how much we are moving and thinking and stressing, that our mental wellness is as important. And so very much piggybacking on what Bo said, that remembering the self-love, that it's not even only about your physical body, but your mind and your spirit and how you feel, about life and about your kids and about your friends and about your environment, to remember to be healthy in those ways too. So that we're talking about really whole health and wellness. But I think specifically from my point of view, I talked a little bit about toxicity in the workplace, and understanding that also has it has implications on your life. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to get up and quit, when you're in a toxic work environment. But once you recognize that, very much like you would if you understood that poison was coming into your home, what is the way that you would get out? How would you protect yourself? How would you find a way, to move? And so for me, I think about these corporate environments and what especially Black women go through, as we talk even now about equality and racism, systemic in all of our corporations and within our companies, and how that disproportionately affects Black women. I just want to remind, those who are watching, that your work environment and how you deal with what, how you make money and how that supports your family is as important to consider when you think about your health as anything that goes into your mind or goes into your mouth or anywhere else. So remembering to take care of yourself in that way as well.
Yes.
Okay, Melanie, you're gonna.
I mean, perfectly said by both women. From a wellness standpoint, I think what I would just impart to everyone, of course, is the self-love aspect. But one of my favorite quotes and things to live by right now is direction is more important than speed. Mm-hmm. And that is just the way that I have been approaching my life for the last 3 years, through all my challenges, personal, professional, through motherhood, through everything, partnership, everything. So that has given me so much grace for myself to be gentle and to allow myself to say, you know what? It's not a race. I am getting to what I'm getting to in small ways every day. And that is the goal. The pressure in which we put on ourselves to feel that we have to be a certain place at a certain time, we have to be by a certain place in our lives by a certain time, especially women, and what sacrifice that comes with when motherhood shows up in the mix. It is just very, very important. And so again, both women said it so beautifully, but the one thing that I would just give to somebody is to just say direction is more important than speed. Just get there, just slowly, best you can.
Powerful words. Powerful words. No, I need to write that somewhere on a wall.
I know, right? Direction.
Sure.
One than speed. Girl, tell
the direction. Just know where you're going. It's okay.
Well, thank you all so much for your time today and your wisdom and sharing your stories. I am appreciative of each and every single one of you.